Hey readers, my name is Jess, and today I'll be talking about the books I read in October with the goal of giving you a better idea of what you can expect from these titles. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first book I read this month was Night by Elie Wiesel. Wiesel is a Nobel Prize winner and activist who in this book recounts his experience as a Jewish teenager displaced from his home and sent to Auschwitz alongside his father. You can probably imagine that it is incredibly emotional. He remains unfailingly honest as he reflects on the horrific conditions he was forced to endure, as well as his battle with his faith and relationship with God throughout the experience. And as I mentioned, Elie is experiencing the concentration camp alongside his father. They were separated from the girls, including his mother and sisters, upon arrival. Their father-son relationship is really interesting to read about, from sharing bread with one another to witnessing each other's illness and injury. You also see Ellie's internal conflict when conditions worsen within the camp and his faith falters. How can one remain strong when they feel so weak? I've read many historical fiction books about the Holocaust and World War II, but there's something about nonfiction where people like Wiesel are courageous enough to share their own stories. I cannot even imagine how difficult that must be, but I loved the quote in the beginning that reads, "The witness has forced himself to testify. For the youth of today, for the children who will be born tomorrow, he does not want his past to become their future." I think this is a book for anyone and everyone. Stories like this may not be pleasant to read about, but I think it's important to acknowledge the past and feel all the feelings accounts like this may evoke. I think the worst thing we could become is desensitized to events and stories like this. The next book that I read was Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I have previously read and enjoyed almost every Taylor Jenkins Reid novel, and I also heard really great things about this newer release, so I had pretty high hopes, but I could not have expected how much I was going to love this one. The story follows Joan Goodwin, who is training to be an astronaut at NASA back in the 80s. Her team is made up of a whole crew of individuals, men and women, hoping to make history and be among the few to ever go to outer space. Joan is brilliant, kind, and thoughtful, making her, in my opinion, TJR's most likable protagonist yet. But that doesn't make her any less complex. Joan may have the stars figured out, but she has a lot to learn about herself. Joan ends up falling for one of her peers at NASA, but because of the circumstances, she must hide that passion. There's also a whole lot of family love, both biological and found, as well as some family drama too. The timeline shifts as we follow Joan's training experience at NASA, as well as seeing her in the position of communicator and mission control as she guides her colleagues through a space mission gone wrong. Many of the people who mean the most to her are on that malfunctioning spacecraft, and it's likely that it will result in fatalities. The dual timeline was done so well because the more you get to know these characters, the higher the stakes feel. Yes, the stakes were always high. We know from the beginning that this space mission might turn into a tragedy, but it certainly became more emotional for me when I began to love each and every one of the astronauts on the ship. This book not only contains a beautiful romance between two women, but in general I just think it's one of the stronger love stories I've read in a while. The way these two characters love each other was just so sweet, and they pretty quickly became my two favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid characters. I genuinely believe this is TJR's best novel yet. I have about a month and a half left of reading before I'm going to decide what my favorite reads of the year were, but I'm pretty confident this book will be on that list. For most of the book, I was thinking it was going to be a 4.5 star read, but that last 15% really got me good. Next, we have Lost Souls Meet Under a Full Moon by Mizuki Tsuchimura. This is a very popular magical realism book published in Japan, but was recently translated into English, and I was super excited to pick it up. It's about a schoolboy referred to as the go-between who offers the service of reuniting the living with the dead. Each living person may request to meet with one deceased person in their lifetime, and similarly, each deceased person may only accept one living person's request. If the dead choose to take the meeting, the go-between makes arrangements for the pair to connect for one night only under a full moon. Because you only get one single opportunity, it kind of poses an interesting question: who would you want to meet with if given the chance? Now, the way this book is structured, you get the perspective of many different characters' experiences meeting with the go-between. Each chapter is about 40 pages long, detailing a different character's story, and naturally I favored some stories and personalities more than others. The clients may be utilizing the service for different reasons, such as searching for answers, closure, or even guilt. As the audience, we get to see why the characters chose these individuals to meet with, and I found their backstories and reasoning to be just as captivating as the meeting itself, sometimes even more. If you like Before the Coffee Gets Cold or books that are collections of short interconnected stories, I think you would really enjoy this one. I'm really glad I read it, but I do think it ended up being overshadowed by some of the other outstanding books I read this month. The next book I picked up was Weyward by Amelia Hart. It's fall where I live, and I really wanted to read a witchy book this season. After reading a bunch of synopses, I decided to give this one a go because it seemed to incorporate the natural world, and that's something I'm really into. It's a multi-generational story following three women who are linked due to their strange connection to nature, as well as their desire to escape the mistreatment and judgment that has taken control of their lives. Kate's narrative is more modern as she attempts to run away from her abusive husband, leaving the city and starting over in the cottage she inherited from her late Aunt Violet. Speaking of Violet, her story takes place primarily in the 1940s, where she is a teenager, more fascinated by the garden and all its critters than learning the skills it takes to become a wife. But when her father invites her cousin to come stay with them, an unspeakable thing happens, and Violet ends up banished from home and forced to live by herself in a small cottage. The circumstances are awful, but at least here, maybe Violet can learn more about her mother and the meaning of the name Weyward. Then there's Altha back in the 1600s, who has been careful to keep her supernatural connection to plant and animal life hidden. But she finds herself on trial when her childhood best friend's husband is trampled to death by his own cattle. Of course, the strange cause of death is not only accusing Altha of murder, but also of witchcraft. Altha writes a journal that helps to guide the Weyward women through their family history and the magic that binds them all. Her words may or may not inspire Violet and Kate to take control of their own lives as they try to escape those who have metaphorically shackled them. I really liked the female characters, but was a bit frustrated with the fact that all of the men in this book were absolutely horrible people. It says something on the back about this being a story of female resilience, and I love and appreciate that sentiment, but I also feel it could have been achieved without every single man we meet in the book being a monster. I guess I just found it a bit exhausting, even though I can acknowledge that this mistreatment is part of what connects these women. Just please, please, please be aware that this book focuses a lot on abuse and rape, even detailing an abortion. Yes, these women are resilient, but it's not exactly a happy or hopeful story. I'm giving it 3 stars because I wasn't ever bored. I was interested in these 3 women's lives, and I found the writing to be quite pretty when it wasn't deeply disturbing me. The last book I read this month was Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. I finally got around to reading book 3 of the Stormlight Archive, and it did not disappoint. I'll be so honest with you, the reason it took me so long to pick this book up was because they take me a really long time to work through. Obviously, they're really big, but I also want to give them my undivided attention because there's so much going on, and I previously didn't feel like I had the time to do so. It felt great to be back in this world. This one is about the resulting conflict and devastation brought on by the Everstorm, summoned at the end of the War of Reckoning, which includes a new threat known as the Voidbringers. Dalinar, of course, has his radiance, but he's also on a mission to unite the other nations of Roshar to stand against this force of darkness. I knew this one was going to dive deeper into Dalinar's story, but oh boy, this was a ride. I was really interested to learn more about Dalinar's past. There were a few pressing questions that I was eager to get answers to. I think anyone who's read the series has probably found themselves intrigued by the mystery surrounding his late wife, so I was glad to learn more about that. And yeah, I guess I'll just say that I finished the book finding Dalinar to be an even more interesting character. As far as the other POVs go, I did find this book to be a little bit Shallan heavy, with her having almost as many chapters as Dalinar. Again, I am indifferent to her character, but her chapters are easily my least favorite of any of the main protagonists. I think I'm just always going to prefer Kaladin or Dalinar's perspectives. Though I was pleasantly surprised to see that two characters that I wasn't necessarily expecting to make huge appearances were not only present, but we also got to hear from them. For those of you who've read the book, I'm of course referring to a former member of Bridge 4 and a very bright Radiant. One of those characters I don't like that much, but I found their perspective very fascinating, and the other character I adore. I know these books aren't for everyone, but the way Sanderson writes allows me to see the worlds he creates so clearly. I think this series and Mistborn in particular have provided me with some of the strongest visuals I've ever had while reading, especially the fight scenes. My only real complaint is the love triangle. It's kind of complicated and really not your typical love triangle, but I myself am choosing to ignore it. More than anything, it made me hurt for one of the characters involved without even adding much tension. Obviously, I didn't enjoy that plot point, but it's not a huge part of the story, so please do not let it dissuade you from picking up this incredible book. Finally, I just wanted to mention that it was recommended to me that I read Warbreaker before picking this one up, and I'm really glad that I did. I don't think it's entirely necessary, but I do think it allowed me to appreciate some moments that wouldn't have been as exciting otherwise. A huge hit for me, I already picked up my copy of Book 4, Rhythm of War, and am so excited to continue my Stormlight journey when I have a slower couple of weeks to devote to it, of course. Obviously I have no idea what's to come, but I'm really interested in Renarin's story, and I'm hoping to see a bit more growth from our awesome Kaladin Stormblessed. Those are the books that I read in October. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful, and maybe I'll see you next time. Bye!